I'm Sky Stack, and you're listening to the Head Smack Podcast.
You are listening to conversations with misfits, mavericks, and trailblazers.
Hey, welcome to the Head Smack Podcast. My name is Paul Pavolny, and I'm excited to have another brand misfit with me. Sky Stack is with me, and he is hailed as a category king of high-ticket branding, is a personal branding expert, agency owner, and is known for the rare persona. How you doing, Sky?
I'm good. How are you, Paul?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Looking forward to this conversation. Always love talking about branding. Always love getting different people's insights, different versions, different perspectives, different level of experience, different focus. And so really looking forward to this discussion, especially about personal branding. And so for anybody that is wondering about personal branding, we have Sky here that's going to give you illumination on the topic. And so Sky, thank you for being on, man. And, I want to hear a little bit about your story, a little bit about your backstory, your origin story. So tell me about Sky Stack, man.
Yeah, I'm pumped to be here. Pumped to be here, Paul. So this all kind of started out for me when I was 8 years old. I was really into this video game called Warcraft, and I wanted to create skins. I'm sure, if you, I don't know if you have children, Paul, or if you have nieces or nephews, or you know how they want to buy Fortnite skins or Roblox skins or Minecraft skins, right? Well, back when I was that age, you couldn't buy them. You had to download them or make them. And we had this little app called Adobe Photoshop version 6, not CS6 or 6. I think we're on 28 or something like that right now.
Wow.
And so I started teaching myself how to do Photoshop, and I fell in love. And so at age 8, I was doing Photoshop. By 9, I was building websites. When I decided to get more into BMX and skateboarding, I just started taking that skill set kind of wherever I went. I would start making t-shirt designs and sticker designs for the local skate shop. And then where I really started focusing on brand and learning about brand, not just design. And, the first few years when you're getting into design, you're getting into any kind of creative endeavor, like it takes a while to get good and to get a skill set. And when I actually started discovering how important brand was in my later teen years when I started getting really into music. I played in bands, I was a DJ, and I always volunteered to help the people who were booking me to be like, hey, I can design your flyer and create your social media banners. I can do that. And whenever we did, and they had a very high quality banner or high quality flyers, for some reason, these shows sold out more often. And as I became an event promoter myself, and, we put on these club events here. I live in Boise, by the way. ClickFunnels is about 10 minutes down the road from me there. We've got the beautiful mountains with some fresh snow on them now. But these events in Boise that I was throwing, going into my late teen years and my early 20s inside of clubs and venues, what I realized was that the shows that I was doing, the events that I was throwing on, there weren't any different than anybody else. We used the same places everyone else who was doing these kind of DJ nights. We had the same places they were doing. We didn't really have any different DJs either. We had mainly locals. Every once in a while, we'd have a touring DJ, but it was all the same people. There was really nothing different besides when we came out with a show, it actually looked like something that you wanted to go to.
Wow.
Because the branding on the Facebook event, the positioning, we took a lot of time to figure out, hey, where are we in the calendar this year? And what would be a good St. Patrick's Day? And so think about positioning and brand and different things like that. We're able to create a huge reputation of throwing these really well put together events and really carved out a little place in the market for myself. And I realized that brand is that thing that allows people to try on a purchase or a product before it actually happens. And with something like events, and I primarily work with coaches, consultants, speakers, authors, kind of expert types, agency owners. Their services are the same way, which is with an event, there's no trial period. You can't try it on for,
10
minutes or go back. You usually can't get a refund, no refunds on your tickets. You maybe could sell it last minute. And on top of that, you are putting your most expensive resources into it, which is your time. If it's a bad concert or a bad event, you can't get those hours of your life back. And so I realized that when you put so much brand on the front end of a purchase decision, it actually makes it very, very easy for people to eventually make that decision, because
Right.
what it's doing is it's creating that expectation of, if the branding is high quality, if the branding speaks to me, if the branding feels like it's something that fits for me and something that I will be rewarded for going to, then that actually goes into the expectations of the product, both from a purchase standpoint, and then also what's crazy is from an actual product standpoint. There's studies to show that better branded wine bottles, the wine is reported to taste actually better when it's the same wine inside of a
Yeah. Yeah.
standard bottle. And there's no
Right.
difference between the actual product, besides that the branding actually increases the product. And so I started collecting all these insights. I ran a few agencies over the years, worked in med spa, worked in all sorts of niches, and then really settled into the personal branding space. And before, it's kind of a buzzword. We're recording this in 2025. It's a buzzword right now. It
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
People who were crypto experts, and then before that were real estate experts. Now they're becoming personal brand experts, right?
Yeah.
But when I look back at the success I had from being able to have a successful events company to getting a reputation in the music industry, where I could, as a 21-year-old kid, I got to hop on a plane and attend music festivals for free and go to these exclusive clubs and meet with all these
Wow.
crazy people and do all this stuff. None of that necessarily happened because my business had a good brand, or had this magnanimous quality about it. What it actually was, and I remember it very clearly, as I sat down with one of my mentors as I was thinking about getting out of the music industry, and he said, I really don't give an F about your company, but I give infinite Fs about you, Sky.
Yeah.
And that's when I
Yeah.
realized, oh man, there's actually so much more power in building the brand around myself, which I've been doing some thought leader things inside the music industry. This is a real power. And
Yeah.
so when the opportunity arose and we wound down the med spa agency at the end of 2022, and I was looking for, hey, what's going to be the place that I can bring all of these skills to not just be personally fulfilled, but also to have a good impact on this world. It's like, well, people who are going out there who are helping people fix their relationships, to make more money, to reverse things that have happened in their family, right? To be the first one
Yeah.
to be able to start a business in their family, or to have good health, or be able to break a string of broken families and divorce and have healthy relationships. Those kinds of people, the coaches, the consultants, the experts of the world, just became my people, and going all in on them is one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Right, right. Wow, that's amazing, man. And a lot there that you shared right from the get go of the difference between the concerts that you were branding well and other concerts that were exactly the same was simply the branding well part, and
Yeah.
people feel that if you've invested time in your brand, maybe you've invested time in your skill, in your solutions,
Yeah,
in your offer,
absolutely.
and if you're kind of haphazard and lazy about it, then it's like, well, I wonder if other parts of their business are also the same way.
Thousand
And
percent.
so when it comes down to personal brand, as you mentioned, a lot of people are talking about it, especially with just the internet and social media and all of that gives you access to the world as an individual, as much access as any other company does. What, how do you define personal brand? What is a personal brand, and how is that
Yeah,
different from a business brand?
great question. So personal brand simply is leadership in public. If you look at behind me here, if you can watch us on video, or if you're on
Yeah.
YouTube, or it says marketing for leaders. It's the name of my community and the name of my upcoming podcast. And I chose that name very specifically because personal brands are leadership in public. When we lead inside of our organizations, we're showing up as specific people. Whether you lead a small team, inside of a creative department, or you actually are the CEO, founder, owner of your business. You have people that you work with. There are certain standards. There are certain ways of communication. There are certain responsibilities that you have as that leader to show up for your people internally inside your company. And a personal brand is the same exact way, especially if you're in some kind of an expert driven industry where you sell courses, you consult with people, you do agency services, you want to get booked on stage or be on awesome podcasts like this. What everyone on the other side of those transactions, whether that be a transaction with an event organizer, a podcast host, or with a low ticket client, a high ticket client, a retainer client, what all of those are looking for is they're looking for someone who can lead them into a new place or a new space. They're all looking for some kind of a leadership, whether that be a leadership for their audience of as a podcast host or as a event organizer. Can you lead who is coming here into a new experience, a better experience, or into a new outcome? And then especially for your own customers and clients is, they're looking towards you to lead them to a future. And we kind of have a vacuum right now. If you think about how often you scroll through social media and then how often you actually follow somebody each month. If you spend, let's say the average person spends 5 hours a week conservatively, in bits and pieces of their day scrolling through feeds, and probably follows one or two people every month who are new creators who are say, hey, this is someone who's worth giving my time to. And when we think about it from that perspective, we see how there's a massive leadership vacuum that we actually have on social media, where lots of people are making noise. Lots of people are trying to get eyeballs, get attention, trying to do the hooks and the gimmicks and the this and the that. But we actually have very few people who have that leadership capital who are sharing. And the people who do have that leadership capital, they're either not invested or don't know how to actually invest into getting their brand out there so that there can be more people like the Hermoses, the Dan Martells, the Ed Miletts of the world.
So, when it comes to your personal brand, you had talked about, it works well for coaches, speakers, authors, leaders, and that's good because it's built around your personality and what you do and what you offer and the solution that you put out there. Is there value in personal branding for the roofer, the plumber, the somebody that's not necessarily, it's not about them. They offer a service that's not tied directly to them. Is there value in building a personal brand around that?
Yeah, great question. Great question. If you have there's always a value to building a personal brand, but that personal brand might look different, right? And where the things that you might need to consider if you're a local services business owner is, number one, are we more of a needs-based or are we more of an ongoing kind of product or service, right? People don't necessarily wake up in the morning and say, what I need is I need a $15,000 roof. They just don't. But when they have storm damage, they absolutely turn to that. And so that's where we see a lot more like intent-based marketing, people running SEO and Google ads and things like that work really well. If you have something that's more ongoing, right? You sell insurance, you sell med spa, you sell things that people need to buy pretty year round. It actually benefits you to build a personal brand, but to focus that to be very hyper local. You shouldn't necessarily been thinking about how do I go viral, but a lot of more times, how can I tell stories around my community? How could I maybe have a podcast like this where I only sit down with people in my city so I get to know people who are, potential referral partners or key stakeholders or who have, respect and eyeballs so that my name can get out there. There's actually an insurance agent here in Boise who has done a phenomenal job with this, with his own podcast that everybody knows his name because he's had every person who is a leader here in the Boise area on that podcast to discuss their business, their triumphs, their failures, and has created this great network for himself because of that. And so there definitely is the opportunity. And you just have to think about, number one, where is the opportunity coming from? Is this an intent-based sale? Or is this something that's a little bit more evergreen in how people can buy from me? And then that second piece being to just make sure that you're focusing where you actually need to focus. Because yeah, you probably, if you live in a town of 20,000 people and you are a local services business owner and you're trying to get to 100,000 followers on Instagram, that doesn't exactly make sense. There's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
even, that's 5 times the population of your current, of your service area. Right. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
just scaling back a little bit. And, if you do have the aspirations one day to become a coach or a consultant or write books or run a mastermind and teach other electricians or plumbers how to do what you did to grow your business, that's fine and dandy. Probably start on the personal brand sooner than later in that way. But just thinking about scale and intent are going to be the two things that you should really focus on if you are more of that local service-based business.
Now, is there danger in building a brand around yourself if you're in that industry? Like, what would be the negative of building a brand around yourself? Is there any downside to it?
Yeah. So there's really two downsides to building a personal brand. And those two downsides, for this applies for any niche, any industry, from local to completely online. The first one is you need to wind down your brand whenever you exit your business. At least
Right.
divorce your brand from the business so that the business can have some valuation to it. Now, this isn't as big of a deal as most people make it, because any proper exit that you take will take at least 18 to 36 months to properly prep, get your books, your systems, work with your lawyers, everything like that. It'll take a while and it'll give you time. This is what the Hermosis did with Gym Launch. When they knew that they were going to sell, they took 2 years to remove their names, their faces off of all of their products so that they could exit for $50 million. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the first thing. The second thing that comes against you when you have a personal brand is sort of related, and it's a double-edged sword. And both of these are double-edged swords because you can grow a lot quicker with a personal brand, but it's also a little harder to sell. The second thing is when
Yeah.
it comes to attracting talent, which is when, if you do want to exit or you do want to leave the business, then there are probably going to be more of your team who wants to come with you than wants to stay at the firm that was just acquired or that you just spun off or that you just put a CEO in place with,
Right.
because they want to work with the person. If Elon Musk was to sell Tesla tomorrow and move on to a new company, or maybe go all in on one of his other companies, what percentage of his Tesla employees would want to go where Elon is going versus stay at Tesla?
Right.
Probably a fair amount. And, he's a more controversial figure these days, and probably plenty of people don't ever want to work for him. But
Yeah.
those who maybe admire uh, his entrepreneurial savvy, or want to be developed by him or around him or in his orbit, they're going to want to go. And so this is the other thing too, which makes it difficult to be able to have a business that you can sell afterwards, is that talent acquisition. And so being able to bolster the business brand as well to be something that is very respectable outside of your own brand. A great example of someone who's done this well is Sarah Blakely and Spanx. Right? Sarah
Hmm.
Blakely, huge
Yeah.
brand in and of herself. Her husband, Jesse Eitzler, huge brand in and of himself. Spanx, also a huge brand in and of itself. They complement each
Yeah.
other, but either could stand on their own if they weren't associated. And I don't know, she might have already exited. I'm not quite sure if she has or not.
Yeah. 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 And I think, it's also different between providing a service like a plumber, a roofer, a electrician, or whatever, a gym owner. That's very different to being a coach, a speaker, an author, a whatever, because one is very closely tied to you as a person and your
Right.
personality. The other one is tied to a solution you offer that others might be able to offer equally, with even with your exit. And so, looking at some actual activities, some things that, if somebody's trying to build a personal brand, what are some of the first things that they need to consider around building their personal brand?
Yeah, great question. So to build a successful personal brand these days, they need to throw out the entire playbook that has been talked about for the last 10, 15 years. there's been a lot of advice around, which is to go copy your competitors, to be authentic, to go really
Copy your
wide.
competitors and be authentic.
Yeah, right. Be authentic, but
Yeah,
also copy them because
yeah,
they're working so well.
yeah.
And so there's a lot of things. Make sure that you have lots of followers. Buy your followers if you have to, so you can have that big presence, right? If you're getting
Right.
no engagement,
Fake
there's so
proof.
many,
Yeah,
yeah, so many tools these days where you could just copy and paste someone's Instagram username and get a percentage of how many followers are likely fake. And there's so many things that are wrong with the current stance of personal brand, which is why in my own brand I use the word personal brand less and less, because it comes off with this idea of an attractive character, which
yeah,
is a coin that Russell Brunson brilliantly termed years and years ago, and I think maybe even before that he inherited that IP. But the the attractive character is looking to package who you are to be valuable into the eyes of somebody else. And where personal brands are going is that we're entering this era where people are wanting to follow individuals who are a niche of and into themselves.
yeah.
Where if you're the business coach who your branding is black, white, and gold because everyone's branding is black, white, and gold, that's not an niche unto himself. But someone like me, if you have seen a lot of my brand, especially the guides and lead magnets, I mean, it's a traditional American tattoo, and it's
Yeah,
all these
yeah,
other
yeah.
influences that are in there that are part of my DNA, but is not going to be seen as something that's necessarily attractive to everybody, and that's okay.
Right,
The idea
right.
that your niche, especially if you're an online business, your niche isn't what you think it is. It's not the total addressable market. Most will never be able to reach that point, and the amount of scale that takes to reach your total addressable market in that niche might not be something that you want to take on with the headcount and the infrastructure and the cash burn and the profit margins that takes. But if you are that expert, that coach, that online business owner, or even if you have e-commerce or other products that can niche down, you want to be working with your people,
Yeah,
not the market. And so if you base that brand around not what's attractive to somebody else, but what is congruent to you, meaning what is true to you, consistent over time, and especially of who you want to be and where you're going, versus authentic, because, authentically, you can be 10 different people inside of a single day. You
yeah,
can wake
yeah,
up
yeah,
super happy, and then you get a bad email from a client, or you hit traffic on the way into work, and you're a completely different person. You're way different than you are with your kids, than you are with your spouse, than you are with your buddies, and that's okay. We are supposed to have different social contexts, and we change as our emotions change.
yeah,
But congruence of being able to be consistent to a higher version of ourselves, a future version of ourselves, who we believe we are at our core when there's nothing to hide, nothing to protect. Then, if we
yeah,
bring that out into the world and we actually use our own identities to base our brand identity off of, it has this amazing mirror effect where the
yeah,
people who resonate with you, with my brand being leather jackets and motorcycles and music and tattoos, guess what my clients what they like? They like motorcycles and
right.
whiskey and tattoos, and they're musicians, and we have these incredibly close bonds because we get to relate to one another off of that point,
Right.
because the brand is what's actually binding us together.
Yeah.
And people, your audience will only respond to what actually relates to them.
Yeah.
And this is both on a big messaging point of making sure that you're talking to their problems, their pains, their desires, etc., but also of who they're actually going to relate with.
Yeah.
And this who they're going to relate with, if you are in a market that has become more competitive, more busy over the last 5 years, like the coaching industry definitely has, this is more and more and more important, because the who is telling me this information when the information is everywhere is almost more important than the information itself and even the
Right.
results that you have behind you itself. And so there's probably some Christian life coach out there or Christian business coach who is going to be able to give people like Gary Vee or Alex Hormozy a run for their money in terms of the amount of audience influence acquisition that they can do, because they're speaking to a consumer who would rather buy with someone who aligns with their values and their lifestyle.
Right. Right.
Even if that person, maybe they've only built a $20 million business, this Christian business coach, but this, Alex Mosey has built a 100 million or 200 million. That doesn't necessarily matter as much as the values and the lifestyle and the shared way of thinking that people want to buy into these days. And
Right.
so I know that's a lot to throw at for like what to think about starting with a personal brand.
Yeah.
And this is where I start discerning personal brand versus rare persona, or attractive character versus rare persona, which is that rare persona is looking at how can I be one of one or one of zero in this marketplace? Right?
Right.
How can I, instead of looking to impress a tribe or to contort myself to be attractive to a tribe, how can I just be the most myself and then have the people who are also like me become my tribe and start gathering around me? And that's a
Right.
way different way to build a personal brand than what you'll see these catchy acronyms like the 5 Ps or the 4 Ss or all these,
Yeah.
because we're
Yeah.
all branding people who make these up, right?
Right.
They're not
Right.
actual things.
Yeah.
It's a lot more useful than some of the other things that you might see out there.
Right. Well, and I like what you said there. And, it is true that you attract what you project. And when it comes to your brand, you've got to decide what you want to project and what you want to put out there, because that's what you'll attract. And like you mentioned, you like, rock and roll, leather jackets, tattoos and stuff. And that's what you're attracting. You're attracting what you're projecting. And so
100%.
you've got to first decide who you want to be, right? You've got to
Yeah.
decide like who am I? And who do I want to serve and who do I want to attract with that version of me? But there is
Yeah.
also the discussion of the alter ego. And so, what are your thoughts on, putting an alter ego out there that is not quite you, but is maybe an augmented you?
Yeah. Great question. Well, I think that most people, when they put out an alter ego, it's the person that they wished that they were.
Yeah.
Right? Is my alter ego is more confident, it's more bold, it's more loud, it's more XYZ. And I saw this a lot, and a lot of what I learned about personal branding was with working with these touring DJs, and being really involved with seeing them behind the scenes of these loud, obnoxious on social media DJs who are models and bottles partying, were just computer nerds who learned how to make music. And when you talk to them
Yeah.
behind the scenes in the green room or, backstage, they're really awkward and they can't hold a conversation. And
Right.
so,
Right.
but if you ask them who they wanted to be, or if you went back 10 years when they were in high school, playing around with their computer and making music software or working on the music software and things like that, they would probably say, well, I want to be like the life of the party. I want to be that
Yeah.
person. And so I like branding around the alter ego, or maybe even a future self, and making that very public, because it does two things. The first thing that it does is it brings those people out who reinforce that in you, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
brings that out with the people, or brings the people in who reinforce that in you. And the second thing it does is it holds you to a standard to be congruent with.
Yeah.
There are some days where I don't feel like this guy stack that I am online,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
okay. That's someone who I live up to, right?
Right.
That's
I like
that's
that.
another level of accountability that I have when I put out, hey, I am the branding guy. And then we were just talking earlier how I took down my agency website because it just didn't reflect what we were doing anymore. And
Yeah.
I realized, hey, that's a little missing piece of my integrity to be the branding guy and have my website be down. I should go fix that, right?
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
so and so it provides this level of public accountability. And now what comes into play is there's two things that always run inside of an entrepreneur's brand. And it's why I really believe that we can't necessarily do this ourselves. Even I've taken advice on my own brand and have had people, double check me. And what comes up inside of the brand is imitation and imposter syndrome. And
Yeah.
these are really the flip side of the same coin. Just like insecurity and pride are really the same thing, just on a spectrum. The same is true with imposter syndrome and imitation. And if you are a mindset coach and think you need to be like Tony Robbins, or if you are an agency owner and think you need to be Gary Vee, or you are a fitness coach and you think you need to be Mike Israetel, well, there's only going to be so far you can go in actually communicating a congruent brand, because you are playing off of somebody else's congruence. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's called social learning. It's a natural evolved trait that we have to learn from those we look up to, whether they be older siblings or parental figures or other figures in our community. And so you have to kind of walk that backwards. And that's
Yeah.
where doing this yourself is something that you can get close, but it'll never be the same as if, or rather, never be the same that if you sat across from somebody who has built brands, who can talk with you, who can hear your stories and kind of call you on your own BS, or call you on where you're thinking that you aren't the thing you already are.
Yeah.
There's so much more power in doing this with a human being. And so when I work with clients, 80% of our time is really focused on who is that person. And then after that, the branding deliverables are really easy,
Yeah. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
simple, and they last a long time versus going to a Fiverr upland or Fiverr freelancer or an Upwork freelancer, or kind of piecemealing this all together and having to redo the brand every 6 to 18 months, like a lot of people do, because it
Yeah.
never just quite fits. And
Yeah.
so, and that'd be the thing too. So if you're looking to build this, definitely build around an alter ego, but I'd encourage you to think about that alter ego as your future self.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
are you in 10 years? And then how can your brand reflect that now? So you can
Right.
grow into those shoes. And then getting somebody who has done this a few times to sit
Yeah.
across from you and be able to pull out the parts of that future self, that vision you have, that really aren't you.
Yeah.
And if they can do that, then you can reach that point of congruence that allows you to love your brand, have confidence and momentum in your brand, be able to bring in the right kinds of people and have it actually fit.
Yeah.
Because the level of content that is required these days to start gaining some influence, right? With lots of video, especially with video content and things like that. If your brand doesn't fit you, it's like running a marathon with poor fitting shoes. It's like
Yeah.
if your
Yeah.
shoes are
Yeah.
2 sizes too small and you try to run for 26 miles, you're going to hate it and you're going to give
Right.
up. And
Right.
most people who burn out on content, they're either not getting the results that they're looking for, or more commonly is they just don't like the actual materials that they're working with on a daily basis in terms of their brand, their image, the kind of the aesthetic. It doesn't speak to them, and it's something that takes away their energy instead of gives their energy. And so they end up
Right.
giving up on their content.
Yeah. So for the person that feels they want to build a personal brand, they're a coach. They're the categories that you had mentioned earlier, but they're like, man, I don't want to put my face out there. I don't like having to make 50 videos a day like people are telling me, and all of it. All these pros are saying, you got to be 50 pieces of content across every single medium, and you got to write blogs, and you got to you got to put your face out there. Is there a way to ease into that or do that more effectively that you don't feel burnt out, especially if you are the kind of
Yeah,
person that is like, I just don't want to put my face out there all the time. Like,
right.
I just don't feel that confident to do that.
For sure. For sure. So there's a belief component of this, and then there's an actual strategy and tactic component of this. One will challenge you, one will give you a lot of relief. The belief component of it, which is the challenging thing, is that attitude is very selfish. If you have the solution, right? If you can help people overcome their disease, you can help people clear their debt. You can help people become millionaires. You can help people lose the weight and keep it forever and love their bodies and pass on a legacy of fitness to their kids.
Yeah.
You could literally change someone's life, change their family, their business, their employees' lives, their employees' families, and you're going to allow the fear, the insecurity, or just the I don't want to do it to get on camera, to get on a podcast like this, to go on stage. You're going to allow that to get in the way of changing someone's life who desperately needs you.
I like that.
How
Yeah.
selfish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even with sales too. Hey, I don't want to, when I coached, organic marketing and organic sales, it was the same thing. Cool. You don't want to message your leads. Well, great. That person is depending on you because they have a problem they can't fix themselves.
Right.
And so are you going to be as arrogant to say that because I don't feel like it, I'm going to leave this person in suffering that is completely optional? Right. And so that's the first would challenge you if you're listening to this and you have those beliefs is to realize that a lot of times, especially if you feel like this is a calling that you have, it's not about you. It's not about your comfort necessarily. It's about the experiences, the lessons, the insights, the transformations that you have so you can make this world a better place.
That's awesome. Somebody's seeing stars right now from that head smack.
So that's
good,
the first thing.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that all of the platforms right now, they know that people are creating far more content that is far less quality than it used to be. They see all the AI content rushing in. They see, all the people who are, I'm going to post 3 reels a day and just to be consistent, quote unquote, which is awful content advice. Just to do something to be consistent, you should do something with a purpose. And a purpose is never to be consistent. The platforms realize this, and they've actually substituted out their algorithms to what I call AI algorithms. And what these AI algorithms are doing is it's like running a chat GPT on your content to figure out who is this person? Who are they talking to? What are they talking about? Is this high quality? And if you can match all of these things and communicate very clearly to the AIs that are running this algorithm, you can get incredible reach without having to post 50 times per day. And in fact, you'd probably be better off posting once or twice a week than trying to post 3 times a day on a platform like Instagram, but be very clear and intentional with things. And I had a client, I don't manage content often for clients. I had a client where we did a short trial run of managing some content and kind of trying out these AI algorithms and seeing what we could do with them. And what ended up happening is we deleted their Instagram account that had 700 followers they'd been working on for 2 or 3 years to get to that point. We rebuilt that profile and designed it for the algorithm and designed it to speak exactly to who their target market was. And the very first reel that we posted on that account was the largest question both their clients had and that the internet, if you look at search volume and things like that, this niche, it was the biggest question that they're asking on a daily basis. And that reel in the first month of running that content, that reel got them to their first 1,000 followers in, I want to say 5 days. So 0 to 1,000 in 5 days. And might've been a little bit longer. Actually, I think it was a little bit longer than that. I think it ended up taking a couple of weeks, but what ended up happening is in the first few days, that was a 20,000 view reel. And as they continue to post content, it's now, somewhere in the 40s, perhaps even, 50,000 by now. And so that's from a brand new account that had never posted before, that didn't have any kind of signals or, anything else. It was a completely clean slate. And so if you want to get yourself out there, but you don't want to do the let me post 100 times per day kind of a thing, right? You can absolutely do it, but it requires the discipline of, number one, having really good quality content. For
Yeah.
even from the
Yeah.
perspective of the gear that you use. Believe it or not, Instagram has a algorithm to detect if your camera is grainy or low resolution, or if your
Wow.
audio is bad. So they're
Yeah.
analyzing, they're giving you a score. Are you an A plus on video and audio quality, or maybe should you go out and buy a new camera and a new microphone to start recording some reels?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so if you can do that and you can commit to no random content, every piece of content you put out there has a goal,
Yeah.
and you commit to a consistent schedule and a consistent targeted message to people who it can very clearly identify who you're trying to talk to, then there are millions of people out there who are
Yeah.
looking for that exact kind of content who aren't finding it. To go
Yeah.
back to that problem that we talked about earlier of how often do you scroll but actually follow someone new and noteworthy, these
Yeah.
platforms know that's their biggest problem right now, is that there's
Yeah.
so much noise out there and it's so hard to find who's good. And if you can be that person who is good, who is high quality, who is consistent, who is clear, and of course you actually get watch time and engagements of people send and share, and they send those kind of engagement signals to the algorithm. If you can do that, then you can get away with poaching far less than somebody else and getting far more reach, engagement, influence, audience, follows, interaction than the people who are just burning themselves to the ground trying to post 100 times per day.
Yeah, and for the person that's like, okay, you convinced me. You gave me a head smack right there. I'm seeing stars. My eyes are a little clearer now. I'm going to start posting content. Is there a platform that you've seen that is the most effective for it? Is it all of them? Is it one of them, or are they, divided into specialties of what you actually do?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I recommend starting out text based. Always, always, always. Video is great. It takes a lot of your time, it takes a lot of your resources. Most people, to edit at the quality that you want to edit, you'll have to hire a video editor. And even the AI apps that claim that you can, use an app, you can technically add captions and do things like that, but it's just not the same as having a professional work on it. But what's nice is you could go somewhere and pick your flavor of what works for you. For me, it was Facebook. But Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, whatever kind of feels like it might even be your home to consume content, and go there and start testing out your messages.
Yeah,
It's a lot cheaper to write a text post, even without AI. And I probably encourage you to write as much as you can without AI, because that's your original thought leadership. And
yeah,
as you're learning yourself and you're learning your message, it's going to be more helpful for you to come up with these posts than it will be to outsource it to an LLM. But if you can start there, you can start noticing what actually hits, right?
right,
Hey, when I
right.
talk about this topic and I say it this way, I got a ton of engagement. I got a ton of people being
Yeah,
like, I never thought of that before. And then
yeah,
you can just start banking those, right? Write them down, copy a note to them, and you can start using that to then base your short form and your long form content off of. You can go to somewhere like YouTube and know that, hey, the reel that we did for that client that got 40,000 views in the first month, that would be something great to take from a 1 minute reel into a 15-minute YouTube video,
yeah,
right? Because we
yeah,
have the proof that the market, and the market who they want to work with too, by the way, every single person engaging and following and everything like that was right down the middle of who we were looking for to build that tribe around her. And so, that to be said, um, being able to do that, you can start off very, very inexpensively on your time and your own budget on a platform like LinkedIn, Facebook, uh, Twitter, X, Threads. Start there, and then as you're thinking about more leveraged places of content like YouTube, where content typically lives a lot longer,
right,
then you can do a lot more, right? And when you're ready to, I mean, the big advantage of places like Instagram and TikTok, and these different apps is the content is very, very short lived, but it can give you a big boost in audience. So when you actually have systems in your business and you're ready to take on, hey, if we got 2,000 leads overnight, we could actually do something with that. then
Yeah.
definitely start investing in something like Instagram. But in the meantime, start off text based, move on to YouTube, and then go from there.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So let's talk about the rare persona framework a little
Yeah.
deeper. I know you've talked about little bits and pieces of it. So tell me, what is the rare persona framework,
Yeah,
and how does it help somebody that's trying to build a personal brand?
for sure. For sure. So you ever get into a niche, let's say, or maybe it's in a niche that you've touched before, and there's just like one or two people who, yeah, they do the same things that everyone else does, but they just seem to stand a head and a shoulders above everyone else in terms of
Yeah,
who they are personally, in terms of their influence, in terms of their business outcomes. It's something that I started noticing as well, which is not all personal brands are created the same. And looking at what I was doing to help create some of these brands that were doing that, clients of mine who were going on to stages that most would kill to be speaking on, getting JV opportunities, really just promotion inside of their niche in a way that, in one way, was very well deserved, but in another way was very unusual and perhaps someone would say not deserved for where they were inside of their journey versus the size of the opportunity given to them. And it made me start thinking about what is actually wrong with personal brands right now. Um, and how do we fix that? And that's where I started seeing the four tenets of the rare persona, which we talked about a little bit as well. But to put them all in one place is that the first thing that a rare persona uses is that a rare persona uses congruence instead of authenticity, right?
yeah,
Authenticity, you can wake up a completely different person than you are after you have your cup of coffee.
right.
It does not mean you should be your cranky, caffeine needing self inside of your brand. And
Yeah,
if you think about when people say, I'm just being authentic or I'm just being real, they never use that to excuse or explain good behavior. They always
yeah,
use it
yeah.
to explain what they know is poor behavior. And
Right, right.
so authenticity is a beautiful part about being a human. It's not a part that should be in your brand. But
Yeah,
instead is that congruency of picking, whether that be an alter ego, a future self, who you believe you were called or created to be. And how do I make that the focal point of the brand that I base everything else around?
yeah.
Um, the second thing,
Well, what are some things that help to find that?
yeah,
Because some people do that. They wake up grumpy, they post grumpy, and then by the afternoon they're feeling better, they post better. They've got these different versions of themselves that their social media is kind of all over the place. And also when you're talking to, I don't need my plumber to be authentic. I just need
yeah,
them to do their thing in the best way possible. So you're right about the authenticity. The authentic self, when somebody says I'm being real, is usually they're being rude, like you said. So
yeah.
so how do you find that? How do you create the congruency with your personal brand, and what are some things that you have to start dealing with to make that happen?
Yeah, definitely. So the best place to start, the best way to do it is to sit across from someone else who can find that in you and spot that in you. So there's very old advice that when I was a kid learning marketing, I heard Gary Vee say over and over again, which is ask the three closest people to you, you know, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what your strengths are, what they think your values are, so you can get kind of an idea of yourself. So that's something to do. The other way you can get this feedback is in looking at your clients and what your clients say about you versus maybe what they've said about other people like you, right?
Yeah,
Hey, I've worked with a million business coaches before. You're not flaky, right?
yeah, yeah,
That'll start telling you a little bit of the values that you have. And then the other side of it is, what do you actually love creatively? Or what are you linked to in terms of aesthetic, in terms of vibe, in terms of energy? So when I work with clients, I often get the feedback that, hey, your onboarding form was the longest onboarding form I've ever taken.
yeah, yeah,
Like it took me like 3 days to finally finish. Um, and in there, I ask for everything about them.
Yeah.
What music do you listen to? What t-shirt brands do you buy from? What brands would you never buy from? Who do you admire in your niche, outside of your niche? Who do you never want to be confused with?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we get inside of what I have is it's a thought leader alchemy session, which is where we really go deep on this. Is we're also finding things like I have one client right now, for example, who all of his fondest memories were at his grandfather's ranch in South Dakota. And so we're building this entire brand now, a business facing brand, but with this Western plains and
Yeah.
rocks
Yeah.
and the Badlands, we're building with that kind of a feel.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say it would be. It's a little bit of the values that other people reflect back at you, or if you even look at the thread of your life and how you responded to different situations and when you saw yourself at your best, who was that? And then it's going to be bringing in your tastes and oftentimes having the boldness to bring in that taste.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because most people, hey, I'm a business coach. It's going to be white, black, and gold, or it's going to be white and blue.
Yeah.
Even for us
Yeah.
branding people, we like to use orange and yellow a lot because no one else does. So we're like, I'm going to make a brand
Yeah.
using orange and yellow, self
Yeah.
included.
I've seen a lot of them using pink too. Like a lot of
Yeah,
branding people using pink quite a bit.
for sure. For sure. And so it's, it's being able to step a little bit outside of that mold and have that guts. That's what actually helps people ascribe and recognize leadership in you.
Good. So congruency is the first one. What's the second thing?
Congruency is the first one. The second one is brand to self instead of brand to the audience. Because again, your own branding creates your audience. And so this is really for coaches and consultants, it works very well because number one, you're going to be spending a lot of time with your clients.
Yeah.
A lot of time with your clients. Even as an agency owner, you are going from call to call to call to call with project updates, with account management calls, with onboarding proposals. I mean, you're spending so much time with these people. So they first off should be your people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Who you actually genuinely enjoy spending time with. And so, if you love working with, let's say you love working with young entrepreneurs, right? Being able to have a brand that shows that side of you that would bring in those people but repel out anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
That could be something that is good to have, right? So that's kind of the first thing. The second part of that, though, is that when you actually brand to yourself, you are only bringing in the kinds of people who have the same expectations that you do, right? Um, with how I talk about branding, it's a very long play. I very, very much push away. Hey, if you're looking to make 900K a minute by next week, like don't come work with me.
Right.
That's not how I roll. But
Yeah.
if you want to build long-term influence and you want to be able to leave this life knowing that you left the world a much better place than you found it, then let's talk.
Yeah.
And that to be said, when you brand to yourself in that way, you get kind of get both those factors of bringing in the people who have that value, that lifestyle. They all reflect different facets of you because you built that into your brand. And then you also get the people who you only want to work with because, as you said, what you project, you attract. And so
Yeah.
by projecting how you live your life, the values that you have, then people will come to you for that. When you're running a rare persona versus like a personal brand, people come to you in that rare persona to be able to cultivate the things you've cultivated in your life for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if they recognize that, man, Paul is creative, Paul is out of the box. He's able to come up with things and give the head smack and flip paradigms over, right? I want to be more like that. So I'm going to work with Paul over somebody else because I want to be able to have that insight
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that perspective when I look at my own business, my own problems. And so that's what people are coming for. And so highlight that up. So that's the second thing is brand to self instead of brand to audience.
Yeah. I love that. And what's the next
Cool.
thing?
So next thing is deep over wide. So we all know the people who have 100,000 followers on Instagram, but only 2,000 of them are real. I can tell you right
Right.
now, I have 3 posts on my Instagram. One is from me, 2 are collaborations from podcasts or stages I've been on. And I think I have 600 followers who mainly followed me over from my Facebook where I'm actually active.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but that to be said, I built an incredible business for myself off of an audience of 6,000 people on Facebook. I get invited onto podcasts like this. I get invited on stages and masterminds because I have deep authority versus wide appeal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I have some clients who are also, virtual nobodies, people who have 2,000, 3,000 followers on Instagram who are selling 100K offers to their people because they have that much authority over the client and over
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
journey. And it requires you, number one, to be really good at what you do. You can't be a leader and also not know your stuff. It's just how it
Right.
goes.
Right.
But the second thing it requires, and this is what people don't really talk about, is it requires you to be able to own everything that has happened to you.
Wow.
And you can only have authority with that you bring to the light, and that you use to basically to harness for good is the best way I can put it. And I haven't shared this publicly, so I'm getting the words to share this, but there's someone who needs to hear this. I know that there are the things that you want to share the least about yourself publicly are probably the things that would actually change your life and the lives of others the most.
Wow.
But
Wow.
because there's the frame of I need to be perfect, I need to have my highlight reel out there, I need to be the expert, we shy away from these things. And the frame when you own your failures, you own your misfortunes, you own your trauma, you can still have power in that frame.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to see a victim,
Yeah.
especially a leader putting themselves in a victim position. Just look at
Yeah.
the response to all the crying CEOs on LinkedIn. Do you remember this a couple years ago?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like no one wants to see that, right? But
Right.
if you can either come from a place of ownership of hey, this is what I had to do, a place of victory. I had to make a really hard decision to lay off these clients or lay off these team members. Because of it, we got the company financially healthy and we are able to hire like a bunch of them back on who still wanted to work with us. And now we're cruising towards an exit, or the third frame is just empathy and compassion. Hey,
Yeah.
I
I
had to
like
fire
that.
half of my workforce. If you're going through, say, market's going crazy or there's a downturn inside your industry, if you're going through that, I feel for you.
Yeah.
And I've been in your shoes. I just want to tell you it's going to be okay. These people, they're going to be taken care of. It's not like they're all going to be on the streets because of this. They're going to find other jobs, and you're going to look back at this as a really hard decision, but as, one that you're grateful that you made.
Yeah.
And so so many people are missing out, and self included, of putting out my own polished story. And when I started my personal brand, I was in a place of extreme I was at rock bottom. Essentially, I had wound down or virtually lost my agency. All my clients decided to fire me at the same time. We went from 30K a month recurring billing down to zero. um,
Wow.
we During all the stress of that, we ended up our bank ended up switching over the car payment system for our Jeep Wrangler. And of course, I thought that I switched over the payments too until I went outside one
Oh,
day and
wow.
realized it wasn't there.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I'm sitting here looking at my dwindling savings with no revenue down. We just got our car repossessed. And I'm like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I realized that all of what I'm doing now, I had whispers of doing during that med spa agency about
Yeah.
18 months before. It's actually when I came across Hormozy's content when he just barely put out $100 million leads. No one really knew about it. and was going through that material and realizing, hey, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to do something. I don't know if it's like coaching or like building a gym launch or something, but it's like, it's not making Botox ads and selling lip filler. Like that's
Yeah.
not, we did damn good at it too, by the way. I mean, we made
Yeah.
millions for our clients, but it's like, I'm supposed to do something with that's a little bit different here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a lot of times, if you feel like you have been betrayed, if you feel like things have happened to you unfairly, but you can look back and realize that, hey, maybe what I thought was a betrayal is actually a promotion.
Wow. Wow.
And if I would have gone the easy way when I first got the idea, when I first had the impression, when I just got the download, hey, this is what I should do, probably this wouldn't have to happen. But
Yeah.
there might be a plan out there for me to be in this position. And I could either go the easy way or I can go the hard way. And
Yeah.
sometimes we're stubborn and we go the hard way. And that was definitely for me, which is I was supposed to be in that position. And because I dragged my feet, ended up, causing a lot of damage along the way. But at the same time, being able to talk with an entrepreneur who feels like they've been disqualified from their calling because
Yeah.
they've made
Yeah.
mistakes. They're afraid to launch a business again because of a PTSD experience with a client, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To
Yeah.
talk with someone who has, they've had cars repossessed, they've been in debt, they've had bills, and have been, hey, how are we going to do this, right? How are we going to make this work?
Yeah.
Had I not had those experiences as well, I wouldn't be able to coach with them. And as someone who himself can have a bit, I have some empathy, but I can also have a bit of pride. It would be very easy to look down at someone in that position of like, oh, you got your car taken away. That's stupid. You made stupid decisions.
You're
it's
dumb.
not
You
always
must
that
have
simple.
done dumb things. Yeah.
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 Right. And so that to say, when we can own those stories, right, and be able to own that deep authority, then we actually get the ability to not need the huge platforms. You don't
Yeah.
need the giant followers. You don't need although funny enough, you'll probably get them
Yeah. Yeah.
because what is personal, the most personal is the most universal usually. When you try writing something for everybody, no one likes it. When you try writing
Yeah.
it for yourself, for one person in particular, everyone relates to it. And so that's I know that was a little bit of a detour into my own story, but that's the
I
third
love
tenet
that.
of the rare persona, is to have that deep authority. And yeah, now
Yeah.
when my clients, even though my branding work is, largely done for you, there are some coaching, there are some interactions that we have, those kinds of problems that I went through come up inside of those sessions, and I didn't know about them and they didn't know about mine either, but we were
Yeah.
brought together to be able to help them work through that. And if you're not embracing or bringing that to light, I could probably be a lot better with sharing my own losses, my own failures, because I've had plenty of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You do that, and that is just sowing hope, is sowing goodwill, and is actually giving people normalization to their problems so that
Right.
they can see a way out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, man, that is so good. That is so good. So, are there any more tenets to the
Yeah.
framework? Okay.
So the last tenet to the framework, there's 4 tenets. The fourth tenet is to show, not tell. And when it comes to communication, like we're having right now, we know that there's 2 forms, right? We have our verbal communication and our nonverbal communication, being the words that we speak, and then the actual body language and the tone and everything like that you have. Are you married by chance, Paul?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Celebrating 30 years in May.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
30 years. My goodness.
Yeah.
So with you and your wife, if there was ever a point where she looked at you and said she was fine, but her body language did not indicate she was fine, which would you believe?
Right. I would believe the body language. Yeah.
100% of the time. Always, always, always. And the same is true with your brand and with your copy or your marketing messaging. People spend so much time on their copy to tell people why they should buy. Let me tell you why I'm the best. Let me tell you why you should subscribe or listen to me or buy my course or book a call or join my program. They just tell, 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 tell. What they don't actually talk about at all, or they don't actually do, is they don't actually show. Let me show
Mm.
you why I'm an expert.
Yeah.
Let me show you why you should listen to me. Let me show you that I know what I'm talking about. And a lot of this comes down to these little principles and little heuristics and little things that operate on a subconscious level that it's a little bit of my secret sauce that I've coined subconscious authority signals.
Yeah.
Things
Yeah.
like, for example, this video, if you're watching this, this isn't actually how necessarily my video looks. There's a color graded filter on top of my video that if I turned it off, you would be able to see not me and my brand colors necessarily, but and looking a little bit more cohesive, but it would be a little bit more disjointed because that's what's actually the raw camera feed is showing.
Yeah.
Or, for example, this camera is slightly angled upwards at me instead of most people have theirs downwards, which if you think about looking up to somebody or looking down on somebody, they
Yeah.
have their own connotations. And when a film wants to portray someone like Darth Vader as powerful, the filmmakers will use this subconscious signal to film down low, pointing up. Because when
Right.
we were
Right.
children, that's how we looked up to adults and our older siblings and things like that. And that circuitry is still active inside of our minds. And so
Yeah.
this is where the execution of the brand becomes very important because you can do things like be country western and have a lot of authority, and you can do something like being tattoo inspired and have a lot of authority. You can do something that is completely outside of the box, but if you adhere to the right principles, then it it gels it all together. And instead of being, wow, that's weird, this guy just went on a complete tangent and he made his brand look like a tattoo parlor. That's kind of weird. I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he needs to get some better advice on who's helping this business and this brand. But they're able to see that and be like, "Wow, I've never seen something like that. That's really cool, man. I wish I could do something like that." And it only takes
Yeah.
one or two, and it only takes one or two, and then others start doing it, and then others start doing it, and then others start doing it. But if you use those subconscious authority signals, you have the ability to set that 4-minute mile for kind of your brand, your niche, your sort of vibe that no one else has done, but still be
Yeah.
able to come off credible and as the expert and actually have more authority than, when I work with clients, one of the first things, depending on, how advanced they are on their journey, it's a lot of times you have to say, hey, stop talking so much about yourself. Start
Yeah.
talking more about the prospect
Yeah.
and talk about
Yeah.
their lives, everything like that. And if you can talk 10 times about somebody else for every one time you talk about yourself inside of your content, you're going to crush it.
Yeah.
And so those are the four
That's so
tenets.
good.
Is it's being congruent instead of authentic. It's being able to brand to yourself instead of brand to other people, or the other side of this is copycatting as well. Don't copycat. Oh, Alex Hormozy has a purple book and it says $100 million on it. And so I'm going to $100 million brands is going to be my thing. Have I ever made $100 million? No, not yet, but that doesn't matter because
Yeah.
people like
Yeah.
that, right? Don't stop that stuff. Stop. So, be congruent, brand to yourself, be deep, not wide, and then focus on showing, not telling. And if you can, figure out or, come on board and we'll work with some subconscious authority signals with you and kind of get those up in your brand. And if you can do those four things pretty consistently, you're going to have a stature that is larger than the other players inside of your industry. And yeah, good things happen after that.
Man, that is so good. So good. Hopefully you guys have taken notes from this. So as we begin to wrap this up, what's a head smack that I haven't asked you about, or a question I haven't asked you about that you'd like to share?
That's a great question. When it comes to your brand, most entrepreneurs spend a large amount of time, money, resources working on mindset and identity, which is the internal function of their calling or their purpose. Right? How can I understand, even though I've had failed businesses, I've had clients fire me. They all fired me at once, got the car taken away. We had credit card debt that we didn't know how to pay, taxes we didn't know how to pay. We're at zero. And I just decided, hey, how can I still be like, no, I don't have to listen to all of that. And I could still see the light that I have inside and be able to move forward and create a business and create a brand and be reborn from those ashes. We spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort into reading books, attending seminars, hiring coaches, going through our religious texts, right? Trying to understand how can we relegate our identity and be able to really hold to the fact that we deserve this, right? That we deserve that part of our calling. We spend so much doing this from an internal perspective that we don't actually think about what if there's another side of it.
Yeah.
Which is the external perspective, which is, funny enough, we call it a brand identity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times clients who have done so much inner work, who have overcame amazing things, who still just couldn't quite take themselves seriously, couldn't quite see a path, couldn't quite understand who they are or why they're here or that they belong here. And then there's a brand that's tailored for them that I get to show them.
Yeah.
And it changes everything.
What's the most powerful question then that you ask a client that for them is a head smack?
I would love to say it's a question. I would love to say that there's one question. One thing that you can do if you're looking for questions is imagine a event that you do for your clients and line out every single detail of what that would be. What kind of car do you pick them up at the airport? What kind of sessions do you do? Where are you staying? That'll teach you a little bit about the things that words can't quite describe, because if you're saying your brand is luxury, does that mean you're picking them up in a Maserati, a Bugatti, a Rolls Royce, right? Or just a nice black run-of-the-mill Mercedes or BMW, right? Those are all luxury cars, but Lamborghini luxury is a lot different than Bugatti luxury, which is a lot different than Rolls Royce luxury. They're all different, right?
Right.
And so sometimes that helps, but the thing that actually flips or head smacks or is that breakthrough for a client is being able to affirm that small whisper that they have inside themselves that, hey, maybe I'm this way.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not supposed to be like Tony Robbins, but maybe I'm supposed to be like myself. Maybe I'm not supposed to be like Alex Ramosi or like Gary Vee or anyone else. Maybe I'm an original like they are too.
Yeah.
And then to be able to affirm that and then bring it out and amplify that voice until it's all they can hear about themselves. It's all they can see about themselves. It's what their customers see and notice and love. That is the thing that becomes really, really powerful. And there's never a set way to get there either too. When I have these alchemy conversations with my clients, so I tell them at the front, this is a 2-hour conversation where I'm going to ask you things like, what kind of car would you pick up your clients at the airport with? Yeah. But everything else is completely unstructured, just to be able to get to that point where I can say, I think I can see who you are. And I don't know if you can quite see that.
Yeah.
And so let me know if I'm off here. But if you would allow me to speak into you for a moment, this is who I think you are. And I think maybe who we should build this brand around.
Yeah.
And that's where it actually happens, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. Because, finding that authentic self that you feel comfortable living in that skin. You don't feel like you're wearing a costume. You don't feel like you're cosplaying it, is definitely a great place to find yourself in, where you feel like this is who I'm supposed to be. And this is how I'm supposed to be in this world and exist in this world. That's amazing, man. Now, we've talked about personal branding, for a certain demographic, certain group of people. Who should not pursue building a personal brand?
Bad. The joke I often have is that if you are not a high quality human being, you shouldn't pursue a personal brand.
Yeah,
So, a personal brand, again, this is leadership in a public sphere, right?
yeah,
The people who had personal brands thousands and thousands of years ago are people like Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Socrates, Plato.
yeah,
If you want to go there, Jesus, right? These were
yeah,
people, Buddha, I mean, just so the influential thinkers and the people who saw life differently and who had, no one's a perfect person, but, had moral character in and of themselves, are the people who have had brands in the past and who should continue to have brands in the future.
yeah.
From a business perspective, though, of whether or not you should have a brand, it depends on where you're looking to go, right? If you love being a plumber and you want to die inside of your van and pass away at a ripe old age,
Yeah,
at lunch and just sitting in your car eating your Burger King and go quietly that way, then you might not need a personal brand, right?
yeah,
And it might not be the thing for you. But if there's any kind of impact that's on your heart, if there's any kind of mission that you have, if there's any impetus to hand down the hard fought lessons, the things that were a struggle for you to be able to come to, and you just want to make someone else's life easier, or just even, serve and leave this life better than you found it, then a personal brand is great for you. And even if you're in a business where, yeah, it doesn't quite make sense to build a personal brand right now, to dig that well before you're thirsty, start thinking
mhm,
about some of these things that we've said in this conversation so that when that time comes, you can do better than I did and you can listen to that call and heed it.
right,
Right.
right,
And not have to go through, because it'll happen one way or another, but the amount of chaos that will ensue, the altitude and the speed of which you will be able to go when you have a window of opportunity that's given to you,
right,
um, is going to be depending on how you respond to it.
right.
And for me, I was ready, but I didn't have the courage. We were doing great with these med spas were paying us great money. How could I bite the hand that's feeding me, feeding my family? It didn't make sense.
Yeah,
But how could I want anything different? We're getting paid handsomely for it. So much so I didn't know until I started meeting other agency owners. It was like, oh wow, like,
yeah,
we had whale of clients. But that to say, if that is something that's on your heart, is to have that kind of impact, um, press into it. Dig that well a little bit before you're thirsty. Keep it on your mind. Keep it on your heart, and you'll be able to walk it out.
man, it's so good, so good. Well, man, this has been an amazing conversation. How do people get a hold of you? If people want to they want to grow their personal brand, they want to go next level. They're attracted to the tattoo vibe and the leather jackets and all of that stuff. That's
Even if
it.
they're not, if you
I found my people. How do
found
they
my
get a
people,
hold of
yeah.
you?
Yeah, great question. So we actually have a little two-part gift for everyone who's listening to this. If you go to my website, skykstack.com/headsmack, all one word, we actually have a two-part branding process for you that'll show the overall process of, hey, this is the things that actually bring the rare persona to life. It's about a 20-minute little mini training you can go through. And we actually have a version of it as well that is specifically for 2025 and beyond, talking about all the new technologies, all the different things that you should be thinking about if you're building your brand on 2025 to not just have this nice brand, but be able to drive it and have it grow your business at the same time too.
Awesome. And I'll have that link in the show notes as well. And so please take a moment to check that out. I think you're going to be helped in what you're doing in building your personal brand, as well as check out the rest of Sky's stuff and everything that he has out there. A lot of good content, a lot of resources as well to download from his website as well. Well, man, this has been amazing. Thank you so
It's been
much.
great. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. This has been fun.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation. I appreciate you coming on, and you have an amazing day.
Hey, you too. Bye.
You are listening to Conversations with Misfits, Mavericks, and Trailblazers.